Welcome to the video tutorial for Mercury Illustrate Pro. Illustrate Pro provides all of the functionality that customers need to take full advantage of their conference calls. Using the Illustrate desktop client, you'll be able to take your meeting from a run-of-the-mill conference call to the full-on multimedia experience. When you launch Illustrate Pro, the first thing that comes up is a login screen. As opposed to a login for a typical application, Illustrate first asks you which meeting you wish to participate in. Because this is a brand new install of the application, there won't be any meetings listed. For the sake of this tutorial, we'll be operating as a chairperson of the meeting. Of course, the meeting is not yet in progress, so we'll go through the process of setting up a new one now. We start with this row of buttons on the bottom. Most of them are grayed out right now, owing to the fact that there is no meeting selected, or for that matter, even created. That's not particularly important, however, as the only button we'll be dealing with right now is New. Click that button, and a window will pop up in which we can enter all the information for the meeting. We'll go ahead and call this meeting Illustrate Pro Demo and throw in some information for the meeting description. Remember, this meeting is strictly for demonstrative purposes, so we have no need to enter an invitation message. And we'll make sure that no specific meeting time is also checked. Up at the top of the window is a tab that we can use to invite other participants to the meeting. We'll go ahead and drop in a couple of names here. Because this isn't an actual meeting, we'll make sure to indicate that none of the participants should be called, emailed, or IM'd. Though we can change that very easily with the buttons up here. And now the last thing we have to do is click Schedule Meeting, and we'll get this pop-up that tells us that our meeting is either set in the past, which of course would be impossible, or has an unspecified time. Again, I mentioned earlier that we purposefully have an unspecified time, and so we'll just go ahead and click OK and the meeting is scheduled. Now all that's left to do is start the meeting. This is very simple. All we have to do is highlight the meeting that we want to participate in and come back down to the bottom and click the Start button. When we do that, we get a window that allows us to review the participants who we have invited into the meeting. If we are still happy with this list, we click Start Meeting, and of course, the meeting begins. When we enter the meeting interface, we can see the two main interfaces that we'll be working with. We'll begin over here on the left side of the window. Up at the very top is the list of meeting invitees. Generally speaking, they're listed in alphabetical order. Alongside the name of each participant will also be indicated their role in the meeting. Right now, I'm acting as both the host and the presenter for the meeting, and you can see it indicated thusly. In addition to the obvious, the participant list can also manipulate things within your conference call. By right-clicking on one of the menus in the list, we see a list of controls containing items related to the conference call we're currently on. Here we can mute all the lines of the selected participants, change the volumes at which we hear them, and even hang them up so they leave the call. Right below the participant list is a row of action icons. You can raise a virtual hand, indicating that you have something to say, the same way you would in a classroom. Next to that, there are various settings for the phone and sharing functionalities, as well as a record button and a button to enable lecture mode. Clicking the lecture mode button will mute all of the lines in the call, with the exception of the host. This gives the host the ability to speak without any interruptions, the same way a professor would during a lecture. At the very bottom of the left column is a chat interface. You can enter text in the field down to the bottom, and transcripts appear in the window above. Between these two fields is the formatting bar, which allows to change around the text using boldface, italics, color, and things of that nature. Right under the formatting bar is what could probably be considered the most important feature of the chat interface, the privacy settings. Using the drop-down menu, you can choose whether you'd like to chat with everyone in the meeting, a limited number of participants, or even just a single person. We'll leave it on all attendees because there are no secrets in this dojo. And now we move over to the right side of the Illustrate Pro, which is where all the really cool stuff happens. By default, Illustrate automatically displays the meeting information when you log in. In the most basic sense, it's a gussied up version of the information we entered while scheduling the meeting. It contains the meeting title, the name of the host, the date and time scheduled for the meeting, as well as the dial-in number for the associated conference call. This is mostly just here for reference. At times it can be useful, but you'll probably just spend most of the time ignoring it, which is okay. What's really cool about the right side of it, the interface, are the features that are tucked away in this top bar. You can see the Meeting Info tab here, but there are also two others. These are the real killer features of Illustrate Pro. With these features, you can take what would be a run-of-the-mill conference call and turn it into a more immersive experience. These features are a lot easier to understand when you're looking at them, so let's get to it. We'll start off by looking at desktop and application sharing. The interface for initiating the share is rather simple. Anybody who has been granted presenter permissions is capable of starting a desktop share. Of course, you can only run one desktop share at a time, so keep that in mind. Actually beginning desktop share is quite a simple process. All we have to do is click on the blue text that says Share My Desktop. After doing that, it's more than likely that this pop-up will appear. It basically serves to let you know that your monitor has a larger than average aspect ratio. All this means for you is that the people on the other end of the meeting may have to scroll around to see the entirety of your screen. Once you've made sure that you understand this warning, you can go ahead and click OK, and the sharing begins. So now we can see that most of the interface has disappeared. We're left only with the little bar hanging at the top of the screen. The bar serves as a sort of mission control panel for desktop sharing. The row of buttons will let you bring back the interface, stop the desktop share, or refresh the connection if things on either side of the meeting get a little wonky. Let's take a quick break to see how the desktop share looks from the other side of the meeting. So here's how things look from the other side of a shared desktop in Illustrate Pro. The first thing we can see is the same control panel bar is up here at the top of the window. Of course, now it gives us the options to hide the meeting, full screen the meeting so we can see the entire display, or refresh the meeting. We can see, looking at the display, that things happen almost in real time. We can watch page scrolls and applications launch. Back on the host side of the meeting, we're going to stop the desktop share. We see, of course, that pressing the button brings back the Illustrate interface. We're going to go ahead and check out the application share. Now, more attentive viewers will notice that we've switched over to using Windows. The chief reason for this is, as of October 2011, application share is not supported by the Mac OS client. Don't worry, we've got people working on that. We'll start an application share the same way we'd start a desktop share. We go to the Application Share tab at the top bar, and this time we'll click the Share an Application instead of Share My Desktop. When we do that, we get a list of applications currently running on our system. For the example, we'll choose Mozilla Firefox, and then come down to the bottom and click the OK button. Doing this starts a share. We can see as this happens that the meeting interface disappears and Firefox is launched up from the taskbar. Up at the top we can see the same control panel that was present during the desktop share. Let's take a moment to see how this looks from the other side of the meeting. So we can see the viewer for the application share looks very similar to the viewer for the desktop share. The exception, of course, being that we only see the application in question while the rest of the screen is blacked out. Now all we have to do to stop the application share is click Stop Sharing. Firefox will disappear, the bar will disappear, and the meeting interface will come back up. Now let's take a look at the final major component of Illustrate Pro, presentation sharing. Presentation share works in a somewhat similar way to the services we just looked at. What makes it different is the fact that it gets right down to brass tacks. Instead of showing the meeting participants your screen, it just shows the document you need to see. That way you can avoid all the overhead involved in a full-on desktop share. We'll start by returning to the tab bar for a third time. we click Presentation Share, and then come down to click Share a New Presentation. Doing that opens up a Finder window on Mac or an Explorer window on a PC. We'll grab this PDF document as an example, click Open, and wait a few seconds while the document uploads. Now we have the uploaded document. Up at the top here are a panel of controls that we can use to manipulate the document. These arrow buttons will allow you to flip back and forth through the pages of a PDF or the slides of a PowerPoint presentation. Other buttons in the control panel allow you to draw on or highlight things on the document. Back to the ever-present Mission Control bar. Click Stop Sharing, and everything's done. Now that pretty much covers all of the important features of Illustrate Pro. We'd like to thank you very much for watching and learning, and of course, thank you for using Mercury products.